Hello and welcome. If you clicked on this video, then you probably want to knit a baby tee like this one. I wanted to make this tutorial because I went looking for one, how to make a baby tee. I mean, I knit already and have been knitting for 4 years, but I didn't want to buy a pattern and I was just like, okay, maybe I'll find a tutorial on YouTube, but I didn't find one, so I just did the calculations myself and now I'm making a tutorial for you guys. Also, hi, I'm Kylie, I'm 27 and I live in San Francisco. I like to make videos about knitting. I used to make podcasts, knitting podcast videos, and then I took like a year off and now I'm back to making videos, but this is my first tutorial, so bear with me. And I will walk you through step by step on how to make this, but you are gonna have to know like some of the basics, like how to cast on, cast off, knit in the round, those sort of things. Other techniques like make one left and make one right for the increases, I'll show you, but I will put like more in-depth tutorials. I'll link some in the description just because this is more of just like a tutorial for this project versus like specific techniques. So this is the first one that I made. Here it is. I made this in Noro Kakigori. It is a DK weight yarn. I believe it's cotton, viscose, some nylon. So it's a good summer fiber. It's very nice and soft against the skin. I used a US 6 needle. So this is a DK weight project, which is what I recommend just because it knits up quicker than a fingering weight, but it's still like light enough to wear for summer. I do recommend using summer fibers like cotton or like cotton linen blends, cotton linen viscose. You could even do, if you live in like a colder climate, like a cotton merino blend. I could do that here because I live in San Francisco and it doesn't ever get that hot, but I didn't have any of that yarn on hand. This is the first one I made, and for this video, I'm gonna be making a second one along with you guys. I am making the second version in stripes. It's not gonna be any, like the pattern and the instructions aren't gonna be like really any different for making stripes. It's just, I'm gonna be switching off yarns. So I'm gonna be using, this is Rauma, it's either Pandora or Petunia. It's Rauma's 100% cotton fingering weight yarn, and I'm holding it double to make DK weight. And then my other color is, this is Isager Bomulin. I believe that's what it's called. It is a linen cotton blend. It's also fingering weight, so I'm holding it double for a DK weight. So I'm gonna have these two colors and I'm gonna make a striped version of this baby tee. Okay, so this is going to be a made to measure tutorial. So you are gonna take your own measurements and we are going to build the pattern off of those measurements. I'll show you how to do the math and everything. I swear it's quite easy. So let's start off with the materials that you need. You are going to need circular knitting needles in 2 different cord lengths because when you cast on, you're starting on the collar, and then once it goes bigger, you're gonna want to change to a longer cord. You're gonna need a tape measure, something to put your stitches on hold, so scrap yarn or different cords. You're gonna need stitch markers and some scissors. So to start off, you're gonna need to make a swatch. I know some people are anti-swatch and don't like doing it, but it's gonna be hard to do the measurements if you don't have a swatch. This is a swatch I made for this one. I will need to make a new swatch for the striped version that I'm gonna make. But I typically, for my swatches, I usually cast on 30 stitches and then just knit a little bit. The stitch gauge matters a lot more than the row gauge just because we are gonna be measuring as we go to get the desired length. So the stitch gauge is the most important. So I usually cast on 30 and then I just knit a little bit, about like an inch of fabric. Okay, let's do some math now. So my gauge is 20 stitches equals 10 centimeters on US 7 needles. And so I'm gonna take my stitches, which is 20, and divide that by centimeters. So 20 divided by 10 equals 2. That means that there are 2 stitches for every 1 centimeter. Let's say you have 21 stitches. That would be 21 divided by 10, that'd be 2.1. Or if you have 18 stitches, that would be 1.8. Or if you had 23 stitches, that would be 2.3. So that is the number that we are gonna want to remember. For me, that's easy, mine is 2. So keep that number written down in the back of your head for the next part. So we are gonna start with the collar. That's where we're gonna cast on. And I decided that I wanted my collar to be around 44 centimeters around. And I didn't like measure my neck per se, so I ended up measuring a baby tee that like I already have and I like the fit of. And I personally like it a little bit wider, like not as close to the neck like this shirt is. I want it to be a little bit wider, so I went with 44 centimeters. But it really depends on how you want the neckline, so maybe measure a t-shirt that you already have that you like the neckline of. So mine is 44 centimeters around. I'm gonna take that 44 and multiply it by 2, which was the number that I got from my gauge, and 44 times 2 is 88. So I am gonna cast on 88 stitches for the collar. So the way a raglan works is you cast on for the collar, and then you put stitch markers in 4 different places, and that'll mark where you do your increases. And that'll separate the sections like front, back, sleeve, and sleeve. And then you'll just knit in the round and increase at those 4 different points so that it grows out until you get the number of stitches that you want for it to be big enough to cover your bust. Now, I would say the like average like standard ratio for a raglan is typically you do 1/3 of the stitches for the front, 1/3 for the back, and then 1/3 for both sleeves, so 1/6 for each sleeve. So let's do a little bit of math. So my stitch count for the collar cast on is 88. So 1/3 of 88 is 29.3, which is gonna round up to 30. So that means I am gonna have 30 stitches for the front and 30 stitches for the back. Now, I only have a total of 28 stitches left for the sleeves. That means I'm gonna do 14 and 14. So when you place the stitch markers, that's where you're gonna place the stitch markers to separate the sections, and those are my specific numbers. Okay, the next measurement we need is our bust measurement. My bust is 81 centimeters around. However, we want 20 centimeters of negative ease. I would say, like, I would recommend 15 to 20 centimeters. I personally like 20, and that's what I did on my previous baby tee. So we're gonna take our bust measurement, mine is 81, minus 20, because we want that negative ease, and that equals 61. So that is the number that we are gonna use to do our calculations. So once again, I'm gonna take 61 and times it by 2, which is the number I got from my gauge before, and that equals 122 stitches. So that means that the body of my top should have 122 stitches. And so that's pretty much all of the math that you need to do. So yeah, you're gonna cast on, I'm gonna cast on 88, I'm gonna separate for my different raglan sections, I'm gonna increase, just keep increasing until I get to the point where there are 122 stitches for the body. So that means that there would be 61 stitches for both the front and the back to equal 122. So once I get to that point, that's when I would know I can stop doing the raglan increases, is when I have 66 stitches for the front section and 66 stitches for the back. I'm not worried about how many stitches are for the sleeves, because I know I'm just like checking that it'll like cover my bust, like it'll be the right measurements for my bust. So now we can just start knitting.
Okay, hi guys, welcome to my little bit dirty desk, but we are gonna get started. I have my needles on a 9-inch circular cord. This is what we're gonna start on for the collar, and we're just gonna cast on. I've only ever learned one way to cast on, like when I first started knitting, like from a YouTube video. this is the only way I've learned, and it's the only way I've done ever since. So we're just gonna cast on. My cast on number is 88, so go ahead and cast on the number that you got. Okay, so I've cast on my 88 stitches, and now we are going to join to knit in the round and make sure, like twist these stitches to make sure that they're not twisted and they're all facing the same way. Okay, all my stitches, ooh, yes, nothing is twisted, they're all facing the same way. And I'm gonna take my stitch marker, it's gonna be my beginning of round marker. It's gonna be different than all my other stitch markers, so I just know that it's the beginning of the round. Then we're just gonna join in the round and knit, just one round and normal. We're gonna knit one round, just normal knit, stockinette. Honestly, really hard to knit in the position that I am. Like trying to have the camera show what I'm doing. But I'll come back once I've knit this round. Okay, so we've knit one round. We're gonna knit one more round, and this time add in our other stitch markers to mark where we're gonna do our raglan increases. So I want to have my beginning of round marker at the center of my back. So my back and front both have 32 stitches, and since I want this to be the center of my back, I'm going to count half of 32, which is 16 question mark. I did just have to use a calculator. Okay, so I'm gonna knit 16 and then add a stitch marker. 1, 2, 14, 15. Okay, I've knit 16, so I'm gonna add my first stitch marker. And then both of my sleeves are gonna have 12 stitches. So now I'm gonna knit 12 stitches and add another stitch marker. Add a stitch marker. Now it's time for the front section, which is 32 stitches. So I will knit 32 and then add a stitch marker. Okay, I just did 32 and I'm adding a stitch. Now we have our second sleeve section, which is 12. And then I'll add my last stitch marker. Okay, adding in my final stitch marker. And then I should have 16 more stitches to knit to the beginning of round, because that'll equal 32 for the back panel. Okay, so now we have all of our stitch markers, all of our sections. I would recommend to count them and make sure that it's all correct. What's nice about these stitch markers is that they can like come off and you can like change them. These ones, like you'd have to like knit to get to them, but we have our sections, our back, both of our sleeves, and our front. And so now that we have that, we can just, we can start the raglan increases. Like I said, I'm doing stripes for this version. So now I'm switching to my blue yarn. I'm gonna switch every 2 rows. This is not gonna like change, like be different for the pattern at all. You're just gonna see me change colors every 2 rows. So I am going to knit to this first marker in my new color. And I also plan on just, like, I'm not gonna cut off this brown yarn, I'm just gonna hold it the entire time so that there's no like ends to weave in for the color changes. All right, so we made it to our first marker and we're gonna do our first increase. So we're gonna make one right, slip the marker, knit one, and then make one left. The way that I remember the make one right and left is for right, I think of rear, so both of those right and rear both start with R, so that's what makes sense to me. And for the right, you're going back to front, so rear to front. So you're gonna pick up the stitch from the back, from the rear, pick it up, and then knit it normally. Sometimes it's hard to get the needle in there. Oops. slip your marker, knit one, and now make one left, which is front to back instead of back to front like the other way. So going into the stitch from the front to the back, and then knitting it through the back loop. I will leave a tutorial on how to do this because I feel like there's better tutorials on how to do make one right and make one left than me just saying it. Yeah, we're just gonna knit to the next stitch marker, and we're gonna do that same thing. So we're gonna make one right from the back. Oh my gosh. Slip the marker, knit one, and then make one left. And you are just going to do that all the way around. Every single time you come to a marker, make one right, slip marker, knit one, make one left, until you get to the beginning of round. Okay, so I just did the first round of increases. The next round is just going to be a normal round, no increases, just knit all the way around. And then after that, you just switch off. So you do an increase round, then a normal round, increase round, a normal round, until you reach the number of stitches that that you calculated to fit your body. So that's what you're gonna do. I'm gonna leave you to it, and then I will come back when we have finished all of the increases.
Okay, hello. We are now at the point where we have done all of the raglan increases, so we should have the number of stitches on the needles we need to be able to like cover our body, our chest and our arms. But as you can see, like if I hold this up to me, if I were to split for body and like sleeves right now, the underarm would be like in the middle of my arm, which obviously will not work. So we need to add more length so that when we split for the body and sleeves, the underarm will be in the correct place. Honestly, the best way to do this is to just put your stitches on like scrap yarn or a cord or something so that you're able to try it on and see. That's what I did for my previous version. I'll tell you the measurements that I got because everyone's bodies will be different, so I recommend trying it on. But for my previous one, I ended up doing 16 centimeters from the cast on down, and that at 16 centimeters is when I decided to split for the body and sleeves. I think this time I'm just gonna make it ever so slightly longer, and I'm gonna do 17 centimeters. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I'm just gonna knit in the round, no increases, just continue knitting until I get the measurement that I need, and then I'll come back and show you how to split for the body and sleeves.
Okay, we are at the point now where we can separate the body and put the sleeve stitches on hold. I have measured the front section of my project from the cast on down. I put mine at 17 centimeters. The last one I did was at 16. I just wanted it a little bit longer. So mine's at 17 centimeters. And I'm gonna be using, I typically just use like this is embroidery floss and then a needle to put the stitches on hold. I know some people use like scrap yarn or cords or whatever, but we'll have that ready. We are gonna knit until we get to the first stitch. So knit normally until you get to the first stitch. Okay, so we made it to our first stitch and we're just gonna remove it because we don't need it anymore. And I'm gonna take my needle and my scrap yarn and just put the sleeve stitches on hold. So So the sleeve stitches are now on hold. I'm gonna remove the other stitch marker. And before we start knitting again, we are gonna add some stitches for the underarm. I always just do similarly to how I cast on. I do it the same way as if I'm casting on, but I'm just gonna add 4 stitches for the underarm onto this right hand needle. So you'll have 4 more stitches and you'll just go back, and now we're on the front piece and we're just gonna knit across the front piece until we get to the next stitch markers for the other sleeve. Okay, we have made it to the next stitch marker where the second sleeve is, and we're just gonna do the same thing as we did for the first sleeve. Remove the marker and put the sleeve stitches on hold. The stitches are on hold. Remove the last stitch marker. And again, on this side, we are gonna cast on 4 new stitches for the underarm onto the right hand needle. Oops. One, 2, 3, 4. And we are gonna continue knitting, and that will take us to the beginning of round. Okay, we have made it back to our beginning of round marker, which we are going to keep on to just keep using as our in the round marker. But you have now split for body and sleeves. As you can see now, just the body is on the needles and both sleeves are on hold. And from here, we are just going to continue knitting in the round on the body until you get to a point, until whatever length that you like. I do recommend trying it on just so you get the exact length that you want, but I am going to continue knitting on this on the body, and I will come back when I have the length that I want, and I'll show you how to cast off and finish up the rest of the top. Okay, we are on the final stretch. I have knit the body to the length that I want. I ended up doing 42 centimeters from the cast on to the bottom, because my previous version I did I think 39 centimeters, so I just wanted a few more centimeters, and now I'm just gonna cast off. You can really cast off however you want. In my first one, I just did, I think it's Judy's Magic Stretchy Cast Off or some kind of just stretchy cast off. It's just like a normal cast off, but you do a yarn over, so there's a little more stretch to it. I am not fussy about my cast offs. Like, I know some people like to do like Italian bind off or like a sewn bind off for like a really clean edge, but like I'm sort of lazy and I don't care that much. So this is what the bottom of the one that I did last time looks like. It's just normal, it's fine, I like it, so I'm gonna do it that same way. But feel free to do whatever sort of cast off bind off you want. I do recommend doing something with stretch though. So I'm gonna cast this off and then we will move on to the sleeves. Okay, I have cast off the body. Perfect. Now we're gonna do the sleeves, and they're really easy. You're just gonna take your same needle and place your stitches that are on like your that are on hold back onto the needle. Okay, I have my sleeve, my first sleeve stitches back on the needles, and I'm just going to cast off right away. I'm not gonna knit any more rows or rounds, just because I want that short cap sleeve look. So I'm just gonna immediately cast off. And again, you can do whatever cast off you want. For this one, I ended up just doing a normal cast off, so not a stretchy one, because I was worried about it flaring out. So I do like how this looks, just the normal cast off. And
it's not too tight on my arms or anything, but it's really up to you what you want to do. So I'm going to do the same on this, just a normal cast off. So I'll do this one, and then you'll do the same thing on the other side, and then you will be done. And then after that, I am going to block it, which means I'm just going to soak this in warm water for like 10 minutes and then lay it flat to dry. Up to you if you wanna block your project. I always like to do mine. It's just like feels like it finishes everything off and like makes it look all good in the end. So I will see you in a couple days when this is all dry. Here is the finished baby tee. Yay. I'm glad I made this one a little longer. It's still not, like, I still wanted it cropped, but I feel like maybe the next one I make, I want it to be like full length. So maybe I have to like wear it into the office or something. But okay, I hope this tutorial was helpful for you. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at @ShitKylieMakes, and I will see you soon. Bye.